Rhino Bingo 3.2, hold down 5.0. Hornet Bingo 2.7, hold down to 4.3. 400 level 1.2, you're left at it now, wind 015.
Hey guys, SimizDim here, back with the brand new airsoft review finally. This is on the Specna Arms SA-H20. This is essentially a CQB version of the HK416. This one wasn't given to me by any of my sponsors. This one was bought out of my own money. In the review, we're going to go over the following things. As always, I go over a little bit of history of the real steel counterpart to whatever replica I'm reviewing. Then we're going to go over what you get in the box and my initial thoughts. After that, it'll be a range and chrono test. And then finally, it'll be some features that I'm going to highlight as I normally do with each of my reviews, and my final thoughts and rating out of 10. So without further ado, let's jump into the review. Just a brief history on the HK416 now. It's essentially HK's take on the M4 platform. Special Forces units around the world that were using M4s at the time needed something that was a little bit more reliable, especially in desert environments. Notably, Special Forces legend Larry Vickers was directly involved with this project due to his extensive military background. Working with the H&K, they decided to make the AR style platform into a gas operated short stroke piston system, making it more reliable in harsher environments such as desert environments and arctic conditions, all the while keeping a familiar control scheme, therefore not having to rigorously retrain troops on the platform. That's just a brief history of the real steel counterpart. Let's go into what you get in the box. In the box you get the RIF itself with a set of metal HK style iron sights. A foregrip comes included as well. You get a European rated spring and a UK rated spring depending on where you purchase this. I live in the UK, so the UK spring was already fitted into it and the extra spring was provided separately. You get 2 mid-capacity magazines with it, which are quite nice, a brochure, a manual, a programming card, and you also get a Dean's to small Tamiya adapter. Now let's go over my initial impressions. When it was delivered to me and I got it out of the box for the first time, I was really impressed with the build quality. It feels sturdy, it feels solid. It is predominantly metal. The only things that aren't is the pistol grip and the buttstock. I was very impressed with the build quality. One of the things that drew me to this one specifically, apart from the way it looks, because let's be honest, HK416s do look badass, was the fact that it comes with a built-in MOSFET. This one and a lot of the other Edge series of RIFs come with the ASTA gate built in. I'm kind of skeptical when it comes to that, only because I don't really know much about onboard MOSFETs in airsoft guns, but I'd read a lot of good things about these, especially for the price that I paid. However, I do have a counterpoint to that claim. The ASTA gate unfortunately had a bit of an issue, but I will go over that in the features section in a bit more detail. I was really happy that I got 2 mid-capacity magazines with the RIF out of the box. Normally you'll either get one or you'll get a high capacity magazine, and I normally won't use high capacity magazines, just out of personal preference. So that was a nice touch as well. I was happy to see that on this model they're using a rotary style dial instead of the smaller sideward mounted wheel system for the hop up. I just find they're a bit flimsy and they don't generally tend to hold the hop in certain conditions, so that again was a nice touch. One thing out of the box that was a little bit annoying was my buffer tube itself was really loose and I had to tighten it quite a bit to get it to be sturdy. And also the proportions on the stock didn't seem quite right. The stock was very wobbly, so I had to remedy that by taking it off and putting 2 layers of electrical tape underneath it, which is kind of annoying, but now it holds true. Now let's move on to the chrono test portion. For this I'm using 0.25 gram BBs with a 30C 7.4 volt LiPo battery. There you can see the Chrono results. I'm going to put the difference between the lowest and highest result that we got on the screen now. As you can see, the lowest being 295 feet per second and the highest being 308 feet per second. So that's a total variance of 13 feet per second. So that's not too bad, it is quite consistent. And I can tell you from using it on a game day, it's definitely the case. Now let's move on to the range test. The target I'm shooting at is about 20 to 25 meters away, and again I'm using 0.25 gram BBs. Here you can see a circled close-up of the grouping. Fairly decent overall. I was aiming at the dead center of the target as well. As you can see, it did favor a little bit up and to the left, but overall I'm pretty happy with that grouping. Now let's go over some of the features of the SA-H20 that I really like and some that I dislike as well. The fact you get two Specna arms S-Mags in the box is great and they feed flawlessly. Also, this does accept a generous range of other magazines such as PTS EPMs and EPM2s and some of the little known brands such as the D-Day 30 to 130 round midcaps, which I own. Let's move on to the front section now. The quad rail gives you ample space to mount accessories such as foregrips, or in my case cameras and camera batteries, as I need a lot of space for these, so there was ample space for that. Staying with the fore end of the gun, let's talk about the barrel and hop chamber. The hop chamber, as mentioned earlier, is a rotary dial hop-up, which I believe is superior to the side-mounted wheel hop-ups. Also, straight out of the box you get a 6.03mm tight bore barrel in there, which does provide decent groupings, as you can see from the previous range test. Let's move to the center of the gun now. One thing I do like is when you pull the charging handle back, the dust cover locks open and you have to hit the bolt release to close it. It makes adjusting your hop up on the fly a lot easier and a lot easier to manipulate. Now let's move on and talk about the Asta gate board that comes pre-installed on the Rift. I think it's a really cool addition. It makes the trigger a lot more responsive. However, I did have a few problems on my first outing with it, and I'll explain that just now. For most of my first outing, it ran flawlessly. However, towards the end of the day, the trigger started to not make contact. What I mean is I was squeezing the trigger normally, but the gun wasn't firing, and that was actually due to faulty firmware, which was allowing a sensor on the board to think that the actual trigger sensor was overexposed, thus making it so it couldn't fire. However, I couldn't remedy that on the field, unfortunately. Keeping to that point, there is two ways you can adjust the board. One is by using the trigger and the program card that you get. The other one is having to get the gate USB link and hooking it up to either your smartphone or your computer. I'll run you over briefly how you can do it both ways. I'll try to keep it very short and sweet. The first way is without using the software and the USB link. You simply put it into single fire, hold your trigger until you see an LED just behind the trigger come on. You then get your programming card. The first half of the card is the options you get when your fire selector is switched to single shot. Then if you flip it to full auto, the right side of the card is the options for that. To switch through them, you just have to click the trigger once in each fire mode. However, the options you have to mess with the Asta gate are very limited this way. The second is literally having the USB link, which has a Dean's connection on one side and a USB on the other. all you do is you plug that into the Dean's connector on your Riff, and then you plug the USB into either your smartphone or your computer. You download the relevant app, the Gate app, and then you can play around with it a little bit more. You can do things like change the rate of fire, update firmware, and set trigger sensitivity. As I mentioned earlier, I had a problem with mine on its first outing. Essentially what I had to do is buy the USB link, update the firmware on the board, and the trigger sensitivity was really sensitive, which was contributing to the problem. So I made the trigger less sensitive and updated the firmware to the latest. And now it's working great. Annoyingly, I had to spend a little bit extra money and get the USB link to fix it. I do believe they should put it in the box just in case anyone else has that problem, because I wasn't able to play the rest of the day. However, this doesn't mean that every Gate board in the SA-H20 series is going to do this. It could have very well been a one-off. I know from the Specna Arms forums a couple of people have had the problem, but not many. Thanks for hanging in there. Now let's go over my final thoughts and my rating out of 10. Overall, I'm really happy with this. It's great for what I want to use it for, more shorter range engagements in CQB. There I believe it is going to excel. The build quality is fantastic. It doesn't feel like cheap pop metal, it feels like really sturdy materials. I'm really happy with that. Obviously I did mention I had the initial problems with the buffer tube and the stock. A quick fix, so that's not too bad. Magazine compatibility I'm really happy with as well. If some on my team have really odd mags in the middle of a firefight, I know that I can grab them out of their vest and they'll work. Range out of the box was great as well. I hardly had to adjust the hop up. I'm also a little bit disappointed about the problem I had with the Gate board, but again it was easy to fix. However, not fixable in the field. I do wish they would put a USB link in the box. I normally do a pros and cons section in my reviews at this point. However, I feel I've covered them in my final thoughts, and moving forward I'm going to cover the pros and cons in my final thoughts. But now let's give it my rating out of 10. As mentioned, I'm a really big fan of it overall. However, that little issue did leave a slight bad taste in my mouth, which is going to affect its rating a little bit. Because of the issue I had not being able to fix it on the field and having to buy something extra to fix it, considering it came straight out of the box like that, I'm going to give the Specna Arms SA-H20 a 7 pews out of 10. There we have it guys, there is my review of the Specna Arms SA-H20. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you have one and you had the same problem I did with the Gate board. Let me know also if you think I missed anything. I'm constantly trying to improve my content and your feedback is the only way I'm going to be able to do that. But that is it guys, my name is Dim, and I'll see you next time.